Imagine stepping into George Washington's shoes and seeing life unfold through his eyes. Here's a first-person journey through his story. I was born on February 22nd, 1732, in Westmoreland County, Virginia, into a family that had some standing but wasn't especially wealthy. My father, Augustine Washington, was a tobacco planter, and my mother, Mary Ball Washington, was a strong-willed woman who kept a tight grip on the family after my father's death when I was just 11. Life wasn't easy. My father's passing meant I had to grow up quickly, and opportunities for a formal education slipped away. I envied those who went off to England to study, but I made do. I learned what I could from surveying, a skill that would shape my early years. By the age of 16, I was surveying land in the vast, untamed Virginia wilderness. It wasn't always glamorous, sleeping on hard ground, facing uncertain weather, but it taught me resilience and helped me understand the land and its value. Soon enough, I found myself thrust into military service. When I was just 21, the governor of Virginia sent me into the Ohio Valley to challenge the French. The missions were dangerous, and I made mistakes, but they caught people's attention. The French and Indian War taught me about both the horrors and the necessities of battle. I realized the importance of discipline, and I began earning a reputation for leadership. Life took another turn for me after the war. I returned to Mount Vernon, the plantation I would call home for much of my life. In 1759, I married Martha Custis, a widow with 2 young children. Martha brought a sense of stability to my life, and her wealth helped secure my standing in Virginia society. Those years were filled with farming, running a household, and trying to make Mount Vernon flourish. I took pride in the land and the people who worked it, but I also became increasingly aware of the injustices inherent in the world we lived in. It would take me much longer to fully grapple with slavery, but the seeds of doubt were sown in those years. My journey toward leadership of a new nation began with growing unrest between the American colonies and the British. The Stamp Act, the Townshend Acts, taxation without representation. These injustices piled up, and I knew I couldn't stand by. I became involved with the Continental Congress, and when they needed someone to lead the Continental Army against the British in 1775, I was chosen. It was a humbling honor, and I remember feeling the immense weight of it. The war was hard, grueling, and often filled with doubt. The winter at Valley Forge was one of the lowest points. My men suffered terribly. But somehow, with grit, persistence, and a bit of luck, we emerged victorious. Cornwallis's surrender at Yorktown in 1781 felt almost like a dream. After the war, I longed for nothing more than to retire at Mount Vernon, to tend to my fields and see to my family. But the nation was fragile. The Articles of Confederation weren't working, and it seemed like everything we'd fought for was at risk. In 1787, I was asked to preside over the Constitutional Convention in Philadelphia. I was reluctant. I didn't want power, and I feared what the role might demand of me. But I knew I had a duty to the country, and I accepted. When the Constitution was ratified, I hoped that someone else would take the role of president. However, in 1789, I was unanimously elected as the first president of the United States. There were no real footsteps to follow. Everything was new. I tried to lead with dignity and impartiality, creating traditions and precedents for those who would come after me. The neutrality I maintained during foreign conflicts was difficult. People were divided on issues, and the pressures from France and Britain were unrelenting. But I believed in the sovereignty of our young nation, and that we had to set our own course. After 2 terms, I knew it was time to step down. I had served 8 years, and I wanted to make sure the presidency didn't become something like a monarchy. In my farewell address in 1796, I warned against political parties, fearing that factions would divide the country, and I urged neutrality in foreign alliances. I wanted to leave the nation with the wisdom I'd gathered, hoping they might learn from my mistakes and my successes. Finally, I returned to Mount Vernon. I loved those years, walking the grounds, visiting with friends, and corresponding with old comrades. Yet, I knew my time was nearing an end. The nation was growing, stronger each day, but my health began to fade. In December of 1799, after riding out on a cold winter day, I developed a throat infection. Despite the efforts of doctors, I passed away on December 14th. In those last moments, I found some peace in knowing I had done my part for a country I loved dearly. This was my journey. From a young surveyor, eager for adventure, to the first president of a country fighting for its place in the world. My greatest hope was to leave behind a nation that could stand on its own, and, for all its struggles, I believe we set the foundation for something enduring.